This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Egypt's al-Sisi says the world must find a solution for the Libyan crisis. Leaders give Sudan's military 3 months to implement reforms. And at least 88% of Egyptians approve constitutional amendments. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Coming up this hour. In business, global commodities giant Olam offers to buy a major Nigerian miller. And in sports, Spurs remain undefeated at their new stadium after a late winner against Brighton. In our top story this hour, African leaders are pushing for a political solution in Libya. During the first African summit on Libya, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi appealed to the international community to help end the conflict. The conference took place in the Egyptian capital of Cairo.
Latest fighting between UN-backed government and LNA forces is threatening Libya's stability, and the African Union is concerned. Meeting in Cairo for the first time to discuss the situation in Libya, African leaders reiterated their support for dialogue.
Today, we ask the international community to take its full responsibility, without exception, to find a political solution. We ask the United Nations envoy Ghassan Salame to fulfill his duty of bringing back transparent political discussions that are in agreement with Libyan political debates, namely by activating all channels of communication with all main Libyan parties without exception, standing at equal distance from all parties.
In his capacity as the AU chairperson, Sisi also pledged support for Libya to end conflict.
Our meeting today comes through the fulfillment of our responsibilities towards supporting the stability and unity of our beloved Libya, its regional safety, as well as protecting it from the dangers of terrorism and the external interventions that have taken place in Libya throughout the past years.
The African Union is also pushing for Libya to hold elections in October this year.
The National Army and Civil Police must exceptionally fulfill their duties of providing safety and stability, as well as eradicating the dangers of terrorism and illegitimately armed groups in order to provide a supporting atmosphere for a political path towards elections, with which the nation Libya can take back its legitimate demands.
Fighting began after Haftar's forces mounted an offensive on Tripoli almost 3 weeks ago. Haftar is looking to take Tripoli, but the UN-based government in Tripoli has vowed to defend the city. So far, more than 200 people have been killed and thousands others displaced. Chamrono, CGTN.
Now, meanwhile, African leaders have agreed on the need for more time for Sudanese authorities to implement peaceful, organized and democratic transition measures. The decision extends a 15-day deadline set by the African Union last week for Sudan's Transitional Military Council to hand over power to civilians or face suspension from the regional grouping. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy gives us more details.
Sudan's Transitional Military Council has been under pressure from demonstrators to hand power to civilians since the military hosted Bashir. Any suspension of Sudan's AU membership could affect the TMC's efforts to win international recognition as the country's legitimate rulers during an interim period of up to 2 years.
I support Sudan's quest towards free and fair elections, with the importance of giving opportunity and time for Sudanese parties to achieve this process. As neighbors of Sudan and regional partners, we look forward to providing support and help to the Sudanese people on their quest to finding the stability and comfort that they deserve.
Participating countries at the summit said they would help Sudan tackle cross-border crime, including arms and human trafficking, among other issues, in order to maintain regional stability.
It therefore falls on the brotherly neighbors and partners of Sudan, as well as the whole international community, to give aid and support for Sudan in order for it to paint a new future for itself.
Sudanese activists were holding nationwide protests on Tuesday, demanding the military to hand over power to a civilian authority. President Bashir was overthrown on the 11th of April by the military after 3 decades of being in power. The protesters accused the council of failing to make a clean break with Bashir's deposed government and of trying to marginalize the Sudanese Professional Association by depicting it as one of many political factions. They say the military council has yet to recognize the forces of the Declaration of Freedom and Change. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Well, Libya and Sudan, clearly the key issues on the table at that extraordinary summit of African leaders. Let's bring you more now on those developments. We're joined by Dr. Ziad Akel, a political analyst and researcher at the Ahram Center for Security and Strategic Studies in Cairo. Dr. Akel, always a pleasure to have you with us. Now, of course, one of the key developments in those meetings in Cairo on Tuesday is that Sudan's ruling military council has now been given 3 months to implement democratic reforms. How is this going to affect protesters who, of course, have been asking for urgent change? Unfortunately, it seems we have lost Dr. Akel. We will try and speak to him in a little while. But first, let's move on to another story coming out of Egypt. It appears that at least 88% of Egyptians have approved amendments to the country's constitution in a move that could pave the way for President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to stay in power until 2030. Now, the amendments, which were approved by Egypt's parliament last week, hope to extend Sisi's current term from 4 to 6 years, which will allow him to run for a third 6-year term in 2024. They'll also strengthen the role of the military and expand the president's power over judicial appointments.
The number of those approving the constitutional amendments are 23,416,741 votes, representing 88.83%. The number of those disapproving of the constitutional amendments are 2,945,680 votes, representing 11.17%. These changes are effective from now as your constitution.
Let's turn to news from Malawi now. The country is rolling out the first ever malaria vaccine against the killer disease. The historic vaccine aims to prevent malaria transmissions, which kill hundreds of thousands across the continent each year.
Known as RTSS, a vaccine for one of the world's greatest killers took 30 years to be developed.
The world has been, for the last 100 years, looking for a malaria vaccine. And what we're witnessing today is the deployment, for the first time in history, of a malaria vaccine, which happens to also be a first vaccine against a human malaria parasite. So this is a massive success of the research community, producing a vaccine against the parasite, a vaccine against the malaria.
Malawi is one of the African countries hardest hit by the disease, with at least 3,000 deaths reported each year.
I would say we register about 8 deaths every day. So it's quite a huge problem, public health problem in Malawi, and that's why this malaria vaccine, which has potential to prevent some cases and also save some lives, as a country were quite positive about it, and they were happy that we're introducing this vaccine.
The vaccine is expected to be rolled out in Ghana and Kenya in the coming weeks. According to the World Health Organization, it was found to prevent 6 out of 10 cases of severe malaria anemia, the leading cause of death in children.
This is a really exciting vaccine that starts being deployed today with a modest efficacy, but one which we believe can be translated into massive impact. But of course, we want better vaccines. And so we are very keen and watch very carefully the efforts that are taking place in different labs and companies across the world to develop newer vaccines.
Malaria is one of the world's greatest killer diseases, leading to more than 435,000 deaths each year, that according to the World Health Organization. In Africa alone, more than 250,000 children die each year from the disease. The WHO hopes that this rollout will reduce the number of malaria-related deaths. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
China has received goodwill messages from around the world to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Among those joining these celebrations was its Southeast Asian close partner, Thailand, from where CGTN's Martin Lowe filed this report.
Warships from Thailand joined a naval parade to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. Vessels from the Royal Thai Navy sailed alongside those of around a dozen other countries in a multinational fleet. China and Thailand have long-standing diplomatic and cultural relations and growing commercial links involving joint projects and investment. Cooperation between the two navies is increasing, primarily to enhance joint capability in humanitarian roles.
I think if China wants to become more active, in the framework of ASEAN +3 or in bilateral relationship with any country in Southeast Asia, Thailand would be the country that they could relate very easily and very closely at this beginning. And then slowly they could expand and develop into a multilateral kind of an arrangements within the region.
In a further sign of its close relationship, the Thai government is purchasing a submarine from China to bolster regional security. Thailand will take delivery of a Chinese Yuan-class vessel with an option to buy 2 more. Thailand has offered its official congratulations to China to mark this anniversary and says it looks forward to developing even closer cooperation between the two countries' naval fleets. The Thai Navy says it also stands ready to support China in non-military operations, such as casualty evacuation, providing help after natural disasters, and in aid and relief missions. Martin Lowe, CGTN, Bangkok.
Well, let's return now to our coverage of an emergency summit of African leaders that took place in Egypt on Tuesday. It was, of course, chaired by the country's president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. And the main focus points were the crisis or the situation in Sudan, as well as the crisis in Libya. For some analysis on this now, we're now joined by Dr. Ziad Akhel, a political analyst and researcher at the Ahram Center for Security and Strategic Studies in Cairo. Dr. Akhel, a pleasure to have you with us. Let's start by focusing on developments related to Sudan. Now, African leaders in that meeting in Cairo agreed to give Sudan's ruling military council 3 months to implement democratic reforms, and this extends a 15-day deadline that was set by the African Union. But how do you think this is going to affect protesters who have been demanding urgent change?
Well, first of all, hello. It's always good to be here. I believe that the situation in Sudan at the moment is governed by very various factors, meaning that the African Union is not necessarily capable of resolving the conflict that is going in Sudan. There are international interests that have to do with the situation in Sudan. There are internal conflicts, and there are also regional implications to what will happen in Sudan. Perhaps what we need to take care of is why Egypt, as a leader of the African Union, has sort of started its mission with discussing both the Libyan and the Sudanese file, because these are both files that have to do with Egyptian
And then just turning, of course, to Libya, Egyptian President al-Sisi called on the world, the entire international community to find a political solution to that conflict in Libya. But just considering how quickly it's progressed, do you think the world is going to come together? I mean, what is it going to take to find this political solution to the Libyan conflict?
The Libyan file remains to be a very problematic one, mainly because there are so many contradictions within the positions of the different regional and international forces or actors that are involved in it. You will find that there's a conflict between the French and the Italian, there's a conflict between there's a new role for the US, and at the same time there is a vacuum created by the Algerian retreat from the scene of Libya. So it is very unlikely that the international community will manage to reach at this point any sort of solution for the Libyan conflict, because there is absolutely no consensus over this. Neither the EU, nor the Arab League, nor the African Union, or either the sort of alliance between regional powers is actually meeting on a current or on a common platform.
Well, too many cooks spoil the broth, as they say. Thank you so much, Dr. Ziad Akhil, joining us there live from Cairo. Well, time now to take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, our coverage looking at how the China-led Belt and Road Initiative is helping to transform economic development in Africa.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Two paths, one end. A new model of international cooperation, reflecting on past progress, looking to the opportunities and challenges ahead. The second Belt and Road Forum. Stay tuned to CGTN.
Welcome back. We go to China next for the very latest on the upcoming Belt and Road Forum and how it's expected to transform economic development in Africa and beyond. Well, for the very latest, let's go to CGTN anchor Beatrice Marshall, who is following developments for us. Beatrice, what's the latest from Beijing?
Well, Lindy, leaders have begun arriving in Beijing for the Belt and Road Forum, which kicks off tomorrow. Now, President Xi Jinping has met with Mozambique's President Filipe Nyusi and Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Heads from Azerbaijan, Chile, the United Arab Emirates and Serbia also arrived this morning. Leaders and delegations from more than 10 countries will land in the Chinese capital today to prepare for the three-day forum, which begins tomorrow. And more than 4,000 journalists will attend the meetings. Our reporter Cui Huyao brings us a preview of this week's gathering.
Less than 24 hours here will be packed with journalists from around the world reporting one of the most important diplomatic events hosted by China this year. We know that nearly 5,000 delegates will be convening here at the forum, a big increase in number from the inaugural event back in 2017. And many of our audience probably wonder, what will they be discussing? Well, we know so much has happened over the past 2 years. The geographic scope of the initiative has expanded beyond Asia and Europe to Latin America, South Pacific, Africa, etc. And we have passed the stage that China still needed to explain to people what is BRI, where does the concept come from, and what we are trying to achieve. Belt and Road is now a well-understood transcontinental project. And this is why we expect the Belt and Road Forum 2.0, if you will, to focus more on the specifics. What needs to be done on the implementation side to ensure the longevity of this project? For instance, sustainable development will be a key subject, and this can mean two things. One is green development, how to proceed infrastructure projects without creating environmental mess. And the other is financial sustainability, how to mitigate risks and fund these infrastructure projects without creating a huge amount of debt for recipients. Also, one thing to watch for is whether this forum will set concrete goals for future cooperation. For example, the targets for each individual economic corridor that can be measured against.
While the second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation taking place in Beijing has attracted the focus of all sectors in the continent, including South Africa. Here's CGTN's Noel Mwakugu with the details.
The Belt and Road Initiative has not only brought massive investment opportunities to the African continent, but also promoted development of the economy and the trade of participating countries, especially the emerging economies. It has also played a positive role in further strengthening people-to-people exchanges and cooperation between China and Africa.
The One Belt, One Road initiative is important to connect peoples of emerging economies and to ensure that there is greater people-to-people cooperation. And it's wonderful to see that that results in better investment into the African continent, better connectivity between our Chinese people and counterparts and African, and overall the world needs to be a better place because of that.
The construction of the One Belt, One Road initiative is in line with the general trend of economic globalization.
China has got something that we don't have in South Africa. South Africa has got something that China doesn't have, but critical to it is that it is not just China in one point and South Africa in the other point, but the connectivity that road and route makes. It says, you know, each and everyone can make a contribution for such connection of those dots, and we can contribute into the world over. So we're so excited to be part and also supporting these initiatives because they are in line with what our government seeks to do.
The initiative has not only enhanced interconnectivity between participating countries, but the positive results have also benefited the world. Nolmakugo, CGTN.
Well, thanks very much to Beatrice Marshall bringing us those reports from Beijing. And of course, we will see more of her as the Belt and Road Forum gets underway tomorrow. For now, though, staying with this story, the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway is a cross-border transport and logistics project linking Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan. It started operations in November and it's already having a positive effect on the economic and people-to-people exchanges between those countries. It's also connected larger Central Asia and the Caucasus region to China and Western Europe. Angela Coppola now looks at the project and the lessons African countries can learn from it.
The project fits into plans to increase cross-border development between countries in the region, while also fitting into the larger Belt and Road initiative, which will connect China and Europe overland and oversea. It's provided some key lessons for African countries.
I think it's important to think about each country's infrastructure needs, not as standalone needs, but countries have to come together and think of their needs as complementing each other and form a vision of a corridor.
Financing projects of this nature was tough for the three countries initially. African countries have found similar challenges, but if there's political will and commitment from leaders, it's possible.
Certainly there's scope for some of the bigger African countries to extend finance. There's scope for some of our domestic multilateral banks, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the Eastern African Development Bank, to work with these countries to find a financing solution that draws on domestic resources in a successful manner and in a manner that's not going to overburden future generations with debt.
There's a lot of background work needed, negotiations between countries on a granular level, involving customs and rail and road authorities, chambers of commerce, for instance, to identify internal and regional bottlenecks, and it's essential that documents are harmonized.
Once you sort these out, then you can go abroad and sell your project, and if you did all these, then investors will automatically be interested if they see this seriousness. Otherwise, if there are fits and starts about negotiating just one part of the project, one part of the administrative aspect and so on, it will drag on and it will not attract anyone.
There's definitely a blueprint when it comes to the BTK project, and lessons learned there can be adapted and used on the African continent in all 54 states. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Tshwane, South Africa.
Now, in September 2018, Tunisian Premier Youssef Chahed led a delegation of ministers and businessmen to the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. The Tunisian Premier said the forum was a success and declared the importance of the next Belt and Road Summit for China and its partners.
The Tunisian government has called for increased economic cooperation with China. The North African country relies on Chinese technical expertise and funds to implement new projects nationwide.
We have pushed for a new dynamic for the Tunisian-Chinese ties. We are working together on several mega projects in infrastructure and other domains. China is an important partner.
Chahed hopes the upcoming Belt and Road Summit will increase investment partnership between China and Tunisia.
The summit in April will be successful. It's an opportunity for public and private sectors in Tunisia to take advantage of the many economic opportunities with China.
Tunisian parliamentarians from all groups and parties assert that the Belt and Road Initiative is the most ambitious and successful economic project of the 21st century. MPs have also called for strengthening ties between Tunis and Beijing. Tunisian lawmakers echo those sentiments.
The Belt and Road Initiative is unprecedented in human history. It has modernized infrastructure in Asia and Africa and has created jobs in hundreds of cities, including here in Tunisia and the African continent. The NEWT summit in April will open the door for greater economic partnership between China and the world.
Growing cultural relations between China and Tunisia are an example of the direct results brought on by the Belt and Road project. In fact, cultural and civilization dialogue are among the pillars of China's global initiative. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Two paths, one end. A new model of international cooperation, reflecting on past progress, looking to the opportunities and challenges ahead. The second Belt and Road Forum. Stay tuned to CGTN.
Let's go to news from Nigeria now, where authorities have ordered an urgent investigation into a fatal accident that occurred in the northeast Gombe state. A vehicle rammed into a procession of Christians who were celebrating Easter. 11 people, among them the occupants of the vehicle, died in the accident. At least 30 people have reportedly been injured. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more.
Well, it's not clear how the accident actually occurred, and that is why the police has ordered the investigation. But eyewitnesses say the Boys Brigade of a local church in the town was holding a night procession to mark the Easter celebration when the car rammed into them, killing 9 of the boys. They say the car was driven by an official of a security agency in the country known as NSCDC, or Civil Defense for short. We understand the driver had wanted to drive through the procession but was prevented from doing so by the brigade, which had actually blocked a lane on the road. They say he was eventually allowed passage but allegedly returned to the procession in his car, switched off the headlamps of the vehicle and ran into the group, killing 9 people on the spot. The crowd then descended on the driver and another occupant of the car, beating both of them to death. The local police in the area has since confirmed the incident, while the head of the Nigerian police has ordered a swift and thorough investigation. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The Zimbabwean government has expressed gratitude to the Chinese government for its efforts in restoring livelihoods in the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, which hit parts of the country last month. The disaster killed at least 268 in the southern African country and displaced thousands others. The Chinese embassy in Zimbabwe donated $800,000 in humanitarian aid as part of relief and rebuilding efforts. A Chinese medical team also visited the country and offered free medical services to families affected by the cyclone.
Zimbabwe was recently a victim of devastating Cyclone Idai. Both the Chinese government and the local Chinese community rose to the occasion as they generously helped with rescue and recovery. On behalf of my government, I want to take this opportunity, Your Excellency, to thank the Chinese government and the Chinese community for their undying support to the Zimbabwean problems.
We would like to evaluate the possibility of providing more support to Zimbabwean government and people in your fight against the disaster and your efforts to achieve restoration and full recovery.
Coming up in your business news, up next. Global commodities giant Olam offers to buy a major Nigerian miller. And Uganda is all set to relaunch its national carrier after nearly 2 decades.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, agro-business company Olam International has launched a $360 million bid to buy Dangote Flour Mills plc. The offer values the Lagos-based milling company at $175 million, including debt. Listed on Nigeria's stock exchange, the company's share price rose 9.8% to 33 cents. This proposal comes as the Singapore-based company looks to refocus in Africa. Founded in 1989, Olam was established in Nigeria as an exporter of cashew nuts. It has since grown into a global force with operations in more than 60 countries and a market value of $4.5 billion. Earlier this year, the firm announced plans to exit sugar and 3 other commodities, releasing $1.6 billion for investments. Uganda has received 2 Bombardier CRJ-900 planes after 17 years without an aircraft as part of attempts to revive the country's national carrier. The passenger jets were ordered from Canadian manufacturer Bombardier, each costing $28 million. The airline is fully paid for and owned by the government, as CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports.
Welcoming Uganda's national carrier back, the first 2 Uganda Airlines jetliners have touched down at Entebbe International Airport. The government says it's a milestone for the airline to take to the skies again after close to 2 decades.
We are going to reduce on the foreign exchange expenditure. Ugandans will be spending money, but spending it in our airline.
The final flight certification process, which involves the training of cabin crew and marketing of flight routes, is to take place before commercial flights begin.
We're going to start showing the flag of Uganda. We are taking off to South Africa, where tomorrow we're going to be hosted by ministers of South Africa. We're going to talk about Uganda. We're going to talk about the rebirth of Uganda Airline.
These planes are expected to begin commercial flights in 90 days, beginning with the East African region and later expanding to other African countries. It's hoped the presence of a national carrier will ease travel within the region and lower costs. Fares on the Entebbe-Nairobi route have been among the most expensive in the region, with tickets going for as high as $600. But Uganda Airlines is being revived at a time when various competitors in the region are struggling.
Our team, both at board and management level, are also mindful of the limitations of this industry, the airline industry. The cutthroat competition is all known to many. We are mindful of the not so uncommon failures even among the major global airlines.
The country has ordered 2 more CRJ-900 planes, which are expected later this year and will be followed by the purchase of 2 Airbus jetliners. The Uganda Airlines was wound up nearly 2 decades ago over financial mismanagement. The government hopes the revival of the airline will facilitate trade and promote tourism in the region. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Entebbe.
Sub-Saharan Africa's hotels and hospitality sector is set to see major projects in the coming year. That's after Europe's biggest hotels group, Accor Hotels, and Qatar firm Qatar Hospitality announced plans to set up a $1 billion investment fund in the region. The fund will target greenfield, brownfield projects and conversions of existing hotels through acquisitions. Qatar Hospitality and Accor Hotels will contribute up to $350 million and $150 million respectively over the next 5 to 7 years. Additional financing capacity will be reached through leverage and co-investments. Accor Hotels has recently been on an M&A spree and plans to implement over 20 projects in 2019. Uche Okoronko spoke with their CEO for Middle East and Africa, Mark Willis, about their strategy.
So it's a fund that's been set up to generate $1 billion for investment across sub-Saharan Africa for Accor. Primarily focusing on mid-scale and eco, possibly into the premium brands in key destinations. I think it's something that has not been done before amongst any of the big international brands to generate such a fund. We're currently in the process of registering the organization, setting up offices in Johannesburg, which is obviously quite exciting. The fund's been very well received within the investment market already, and it's at its infancy. We are just starting, but we can already see that there is excellent opportunities for such an investment vehicle in sub-Saharan Africa. Again, as I say, something that's not been seen before.
Now you're looking at opening at least 31 hotels across the continent, lots of mergers and acquisitions taking place with many brands. Give us a sense of what your strategy will be going forward.
In sub-Saharan Africa, however, Accor's footprint is not what we would like it to be. Again, huge opportunity with the fund for us. If you look at the development that's coming, we've got 31 hotels to open until 2020, so effectively the next 24 months. So it's a huge pipeline focusing on key countries. Morocco also included, but also Nigeria, Egypt. As I mentioned to you before, great property coming here in Nairobi with the new Pullman that's due to open in Q4. So from a strategic perspective, sub-Saharan Africa, Kenya across and down, including South Africa, is a key focus for Accor.
Now you talk a lot about innovation as a huge part of your strategy going forward. Give us a sense of what Accor will be bringing to Africa's hospitality space.
To bring new products, new exciting brands, whether it be Mama Shelter, you know, the lifestyle element of the hospitality sector, and then also to reach further than just the hotel stay in our interaction with our guests through what we call augmented hospitality, which is not just coming to a hotel to spend a night. It is coming to the hotel, using the property's facilities extensively, and also what is available within the local market, whether it be entertainment, things to do, places to go, concerts, interaction, activities. So we're looking to position ourselves also outside the hotel sector in various other activities that we're taking part in.
Samsung has announced that it's postponing the release of its foldable phones, citing technical reasons connected to the screens and saying it needs more time to perfect the product. But despite the setback, foldable phones are definitely on the way, as CGTN's Mijai finds out.
Reviews from test users of Samsung Galaxy Fold reported flimsy quality, especially in the fold of the screen, leading to blackouts, flashes, and bumps developing on the screen itself. The company said it will run further tests on the phone and announce a new release date in the coming weeks. Samsung is not the only company showcasing foldable phones. At this year's CES exhibition in Barcelona, Huawei released a foldable Mate X, and Xiaomi, LG, and TCL have also rolled out folding phone prototypes. The difference is that the Samsung screen folds inwards as opposed to the other which fold out. One analyst says the technology in folding phones is very difficult to balance, and that it could be another 3 years before they are adopted on a mass scale.
The middle part of the screen takes more pressure when folding, but it shouldn't exhibit color differences. It must still have a long enough lifespan, so it requires higher precision and quality. For Huawei and TCL and Xiaomi, their foldable phones fold outwards, which looks nice, but can create another problem, which is that the covering material we now use is mostly glass. But for foldable screens, the material is more like plastic, and they still will have to be hard enough to survive scratches and bumps.
The price of foldable phones is likely to be another hurdle for their adoption. Samsung's Galaxy Fold is priced at a little less than $2,000, and the Huawei Mate X is $2,600, all pretty high compared to the phones now in the market. And it's not only other foldable phones that they will have to compete with. Also coming to the market will be new generation 5G phones, which will enable faster connections and implement AR and VR functions. Better camera phones are also coming onto the market now. Given the competition, market observers say it remains to be seen whether customers will be ready for extra pay for the folding phones.
A lot of users right now are looking to see what types of use cases, what kind of aha moment they can get from using a foldable phone. Overall, with the smartphone industry, there has been a slowdown with user purchases of smartphones. Users are holding on to their smartphones maybe a year or two longer than they have been prior because there has been lack of innovation in the industry. So for foldable phones, it is very interesting, very exciting. A lot of people are paying attention to the types of use cases that can come out, but as of now, it looks like only early adopters will be playing around to see what use cases can come out.
As for Samsung, Lee says the company is under pressure to make Galaxy Fold work in order to take back its leading position in the world's smartphone market. It lost its market share in major markets like China after its previous models reported overheating batteries and fire risks. Mi Jiayi, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, that is where we leave your business news. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Recycled material used to make art installations in Nigeria.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Considered a grandfather of modern Nigerian art, Bruce Onobrakpeya has been exhibiting some of his latest work in the Nigerian commercial city of Lagos. The exhibition, Beauty and the Machine, features work made from recycled materials. CGTN's Deju Badmus has the story.
It's by far one of the strongest showcase of recycled art in Nigeria. And it comes from none other than the acclaimed Nigerian printmaker, painter and sculptor Bruce Onobrakpeya. This is Onobrakpeya's 60th solo exhibition dating from 1959. The bulk of the works on display here are made from recycled materials, mainly from discarded scraps from car engines and computers. The Nigerian art grandmaster digs deep into his inner recesses to compose bits and pieces of waste materials into art forms with new meanings and functions.
This is recycled art, but I'm trying to show that when the machine has lived its when a machine has lived its normal life, and you put the engine into pieces, what you see there is quite beautiful. In other words, the artwork or the scraps or the engine has reincarnated. Some kind of metamorphosis has taken place and it has a new life. So it is that new life that I'm presenting.
Titled Ladipo Market, a major automobile spare parts market in Lagos, this work is made from discarded scraps from automobile engines, which the artist has creatively pieced together to form a whole new meaning.
Ladipo Market is like one Nigeria, because you see everyone, every ethnic group, every ethnic group there. It's there, and life spills around. There are all kinds of experiences. People are preaching on one hand, they are dancing on the other hand, and sometimes they are fighting, and then they are buying things. And then important people have their cars by the side of the road and they are repairing. So what you see in the Ladipo Market area is a very interesting form of art.
Bruce Onobrakpeya is a deeply traditional man from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. It's no surprise, therefore, to find local traditions infused into most of his works. This one is a blend of tradition and the modern, the electronic chips unobtrusively blending with ancient Nigerian tradition.
So I'm trying to say that there is a post-African art. Most people don't think that there's something like that, but there's post-African art. And what you see there is a transition between the old art and the new art, the contemporary art. So the contemporary art is really in the country, in Africa, is a post-African art.
the exhibition has been attracting a lot of attention, with art patrons thronging the venue to see and feel some of the works.
I am particularly struck by this shrine, where Onobrakwe has achieved his characteristic technique of being able to integrate materials from different sources to create something that has a mystical aura about it, as he has done here, for example.
Each of the works in general, they, aside from being byproducts of waste materials, they all have a particular story they tell. So it's not just, we are not just pushing recycled art. We also have a thematic standing, which is the focus of the exhibition too.
It's quite fascinating how bits and pieces of trash could be put together to tell a wonderful story and depict the reality of our daily lives. Bruce Onobrakwe has not only demonstrated that he is an artist, he's also clearly demonstrated that he is a fascinating storyteller. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Sports news up next. Coming up, Spurs remain undefeated at their new stadium after a late winner against Brighton.